Oregon 45, Penn State 37 here in the Big Ten Championship game. I'm still here in Lucas Oil Stadium, and I'm convinced that Tom Allen and Penn State's defense never even showed up.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Penn State fans? Thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of the show, and it's late, but we're here at Lucas Oil Stadium, and Penn State dropped the Big Ten Championship game. The defense had no answer for Oregon. Let's go right into this, because this Penn State team can go toe-to-toe with the best teams. They can hang with the best teams in the country. They showed that, but it was constantly playing from behind, and the defense just had no answer for Oregon. Dillon Gabriel, rarely was he pressured. And I'll talk about the referees and everything. Rarely was he pressured. And when he was under duress, he was always able to complete the football. Penn State and Tom Allen had no answer for Tez Johnson. One player on Oregon's offense opened up the entire game plan for the Ducks, and Penn State could not respond. Oregon did whatever it wanted to do offensively, and they could not respond. It's frustrating because the offense is there. The offense scored 37 points against an Oregon defense that I would say objectively, maybe not top 5, but definitely top 10 per the eye test. Great defensive line, solid secondary, linebacking core, I would say had a fairly good game, but Penn State put up 37 points today, or I guess yesterday, because now it's Sunday. The offense did everything, and Penn State's defense just couldn't get that one turnover, couldn't get that break, because look at what the difference was. Oregon made one more play defensively. It was the interception that they converted into a touchdown. And that was the difference. 8 points because of the 2-point conversion that Penn State tried that thing again where they try to win it in regulation or try to one-up that opponent when maybe it's not the best idea, but they did it anyway. Looking for your comments as well in this live show. Just letting everybody know. So I think Penn State obviously knows what the issue is. They have to fix things defensively, especially in the secondary. Talked about it all week on the show, that Tez Johnson was going to be a matchup nightmare in the slot. And once we figured out that he was 100% healthy, talking to Spencer from Locked On Ducks, I'm sure he's having a grand old time over there, right? There's so much to unpack here, but Penn State's biggest issues lie defensively, funny enough. Even with Abdul Carter, Denai Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, Kobe King, AJ Harris, it still wasn't enough because of one player, and Tez Johnson deservedly won MVP. But Cam Miller, Zion Tracy couldn't do it. And what stands out to me is so I don't want to entirely blame Tom Allen. That seems to be the alibi here. At some point in time, you just have to look at the matchup and say Oregon's players in this specific area were better than what Penn State had. But it was the fact that you could have made those second half adjustments, those halftime adjustments, and they didn't, or they didn't do enough. Because what started to work, and I just posed this idea, AJ Harris, it seems simple in theory, but it's not. Being a boundary corner versus being a slot cornerback are two very different things. But AJ Harris is versatile. He's talented. Why not, when everything's on the line here? A 1 seed is on the line, and you might as well roll the dice. What does it hurt? Evan Stewart has not caught a pass in this game. He's Oregon's second best receiver. He's a future receiver in the NFL, and AJ Harris locked him down from start to finish. Maybe it's a good idea. Maybe Evan Stewart's not having his best game. And Penn State didn't move anybody. Tom Allen didn't move AJ Harris into the slot until late in the third quarter. And guess what, everyone? It worked. It worked. And it was on 2 select plays when they went to it on third down. They moved Abdul Carter over the center. They lined him up in a stand-up situation. And then they moved AJ Harris into the slot. And Dillon Gabriel On 2 occasions, notably, maybe A.J. Harris was there a couple other times, but the 2 plays that I noticed, one, Dillon Gabriel was ready to throw over the middle to target Terrence Ferguson or Tez Johnson in the slot. Both of them were there. They were lined up in the seam. Dillon Gabriel was ready to go over the middle, and A.J. Harris dropped into almost a quarterback spy, a hook zone. He was in a hook zone, and he waited for Dillon Gabriel. He said, come over the middle. Throw it over the middle. Never did. He hesitated, and that's why he went to the sideline on the one occasion. I think that maybe I'm mixing up my plays. Regardless, Penn State got a 3-and-out. And then followed Tez Johnson, shadowed him across the formation, and Dillon Gabriel didn't even look that way. He forced the football in a completely different direction. A.J. Harris was the key for Penn State to win this game because Drew Aller did everything he could. He had 2 interceptions. I know he had a costly turnover that turned into points for Oregon, and that ended up being the scoring difference here. But A.J. Harris was the key. And I am not sure why Penn State didn't at least try it either sooner or more frequently down the stretch. Because it seemed like a better idea to have A.J. Harris, your best pound-for-pound cornerback, cover Oregon's best pound-for-pound wide receiver, and they didn't do that. And they didn't do it. And that was the difference. The turnover was the difference. Because Penn State was matching Oregon, punch for punch. Drew Aller, aside from the mistakes, I thought he had a really good game. Of course, he made costly mistakes. There were some errant throws at times, but the throws that he was making, those spectacular ones on the run, off his back foot, staying in the game when he was clearly banged up, that was a gritty performance by Drew Aller. And under the circumstances, we're going to point out the issues, but I can't say that it was his fault entirely. The ground game showed up. The offensive line played a fantastic game. All the question marks that I had about Penn State going into this game, aside from Penn State's secondary, honestly, it was just Tez Johnson. That was it at the end of the day, because the secondary in other areas, I thought Trayshawn Holden might have a good game. It was really, the difference was the over-the-middle pass defense, the slot, the linebackers or the safeties trying to account for the tight ends. Tight ends had 3, Oregon's tight ends. We talked about that. It was a pick your poison. If you're going to double Tez Johnson, what does Dillon Gabriel do? He goes right to the tight ends. He goes right to the tight ends in that situation. And it stings because Penn State is right there. Penn State can contend for the college football playoff championship. That's right. I see fraudulent thrown around because Penn State was down by 18 at one point in time. Oregon was good enough to keep them from pulling through. Penn State could have easily come back in this game. That's a fantastic play down the sideline by the Oregon cornerback. Is he holding? Is he not holding? At the end of the day, he's in great coverage and makes a better play on the football. Penn State continues that drive. They have at least an opportunity to tie it and then take them to overtime. So it comes down to a few plays here and there and trying to cut in half the production of Tez Johnson. That's the simple explanation for it here. We'll see for the next few weeks. James Franklin can't win the big game. It is what it is. That is the truth, and that's going to be over him. That is going to follow him until he does. It's not even about the big game because Penn State does win big games, but they don't win as underdogs. Every time Penn State's a favorite, that's all but a guarantee that they're going to win. But when they're the underdog, it happens. They continue to lose these games as that underdog. So Penn State is, the books have it correctly, the way that they rate Penn State. They know when they should be a favorite. They know when they should be an underdog, and the results have followed. It's almost down to a science, folks. But Penn State now has, and that's what we're going to talk about more in the upcoming segment here, is the fate of Penn State football and the College Football Playoff Committee. Some people are saying that Penn State is fine. They're going to be the 5 seed. They'll be above Texas. I'm not convinced. We've seen the playoff committee penalize Penn State in the past, or not Penn State, penalize teams that lose in the conference championship, and who's to say that Penn State is the exception? I am not so sure. Penn State could end up being the 8th seed for all I know, but we'll talk about it in just a moment. We got to pay some bills. We'll hear from some sponsors. Check in on your comments. Get you involved in the conversation as well, as it's 1 a.m. Eastern time. Glad you're up and awake with us here on Locked On Nittany Lions. We're going to talk to you more on the other side of this break. And today's show is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite, and right now you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouthwatering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Promo code COLLEGE, that's 50% off at omahasteaks.com with an extra $30 off using promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. Again, that is Omaha Steaks. Check in on the comments again. We're live here. I'm working off of my laptop here in Lucas Oil Stadium. I mean, this is just, I didn't think I'd have the opportunity to do a live show, but we are going to get wrapping up here as things are being cleaned up. The Oregon confetti too. So forgive me if we go a little rapid fire here. We're also going to bring Zane Brancefield into the show as well and react to your comments here. Aller's 2 picks cost us 2. The one throw to Khalil Dinkins behind him, that is absolutely on Drew. And Zane, why don't you come into the shot? You're patiently waiting over there. So Zane Brancefield, associate producer to the show, for anybody that recognizes him. The 2 interceptions by Drew. Zane, we're going to go through these rapid fire and try to address as many of them here. That's a great play by the Oregon defensive back late in the game, and that's Drew's read. Drew goes to, if anything, it's the play call in that situation, or Drew just shouldn't throw the football, but he's trusting his number 1 receiver in that instance. But the ball behind Khalil Dinkins, if you want to talk about scoring, that is the difference.
Yeah, definitely, I would say that first pick definitely to Dinkins cost them, but I think you have to mention the other one. Like, sure, he makes a great play, he makes a great read, he catches the ball, very impressive catch if you look at it in slow motion too. But like, I agree with you, either Drew needs to not throw the ball in that tight coverage, or the play call shouldn't be for that. That's the read. And on 2nd and 1, I understand going for the home run, because everyone's going to say, oh, it's 2nd and 1, you might as well just keep running the ball. No, you use that, and consequential in the moment, but if it's an incompletion, then it becomes 3rd and 1, and you still have an opportunity here. So that's football jargon there, and it's really in the eye of the beholder at that point in time. Again, rapid fire. I want to talk to everybody in this chat. Not sure why we are not running the ball more. Let me pull out the stats. I have my phone in hand, and I ran the ball a lot. Well, they ran the football a good amount, but when you're down 18 points at one time, you're not going to be predisposed to running the football, especially when the game's just shortening and shortening and shortening. But I have my doubts about the ground game going into this one. Oregon's defensive line, I think it does not get enough credit, but Penn State's offensive line, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, came to play today. They made the Oregon defense look silly. Guys were winning their one-on-one matchups. Play calling was effective. Should they have run the football more? Maybe, but in the scheme of things, Zane, Penn State was playing too far from behind at points in time. You run the football when the game is close, within 1 score, or you're in the lead. Say, they needed those lump sum plays. They needed to go big. But the other thing is, too, like, Nick was talking post-game with interviews and stuff, and he was like, well, the offensive line, he's like, they played really well. They did their blocking. The tight ends did their blocking as well as the wide receivers. So he gave a lot of credit to them in their blocking. So it wasn't that the running game wasn't working. It was just like you said, they were playing from behind, and they needed those big plays. They needed like 10, 20 yards every play. You can't get 5 yards and 3 yards. You can't come back. You can't catch up, especially late in the game with Drew's deep ball. You need, when the clock's winding down, you have to go big, or you're going to run out of time, and the clock's not going to be your friend in that situation.
Katron Allen, 14 carries, 124 yards, 1 rushing touchdown. And as we've seen, it seemed like the gap was widening between Singleton and Katron Allen. Katron Allen made me eat my words, and anybody else that was doubting him as that and looking at him as more of a complimentary back rather than a co-starter with Singleton. Katron Allen reminded us and had that kind of game. Did Andy Kotelnicki spend all week preparing for the West Virginia interview? Andy Kotelnicki was not the problem. And if he did, that's even more impressive. If he was training for an interview and preparing for this game, Tom Allen, I don't know what happened.
So you don't score 37 points by not preparing for the game.
Yeah, the offense was not the issue. And despite the turnovers, Penn State's offense still put up 37 points. QB pressure was not ideal. Abdul Carter, Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant to an extent, disappointed. And people are going to point to the referees. Look, it was egregious at times. I'm not afraid to admit that, but James Franklin and this Penn State team are never going to say, oh yeah, it's the ref's fault, because you can't put the game into the hands of the referees. You can't allow the guys in stripes to decide who's going to win this game and who's going to lose this game.
Control what you can control.
So, but yeah, objectively, Abdul Carter, Zane Durant, and Dennis Sutton, Devon J. Thomas, those guys in the middle. I thought Keziah Izzard did really well.
Keziah Izzard had a really good game.
I thought he was the best of the defensive linemen. So, across the board, defensive line, disappointing. They didn't play terribly, but they were disappointing.
Also, Oregon has a really good offensive line, too.
Probably the best one that Penn State's seen all season. That they're up for the Joe Moore Award, which is for the top offensive line. Go figure, right? Why is Aller throwing that ball, man? If you're talking about the jump ball down the sideline or Trey Wallace, again, that is great coverage by the Oregon DB. Trey Wallace is supposed to have inside leverage, and he doesn't. That's great coverage by the Oregon DB. So Drew is just trusting that Trey Wallace can at least make a play, and he tried to bat the ball away. If you watch it back, it's such a bang-bang play. That's supposed to, it seems like Penn State can't catch a break with those plays with Aller and Wallace in the end zone against Ohio State, and now against Oregon in the biggest play of the game.
It's good offense. It's better defense.
Yeah, that's really what it just. He made a play on the football. And I have no idea how he turned his head around
over
and he
the
caught
shoulder.
The football. It's the same thing with the Ohio State defensive back. Made the play, just ended up in his arms. It went through Wallace's hands and ended up in his arms. It's really just bad luck.
And if that play hits, fans go crazy, and everyone looks at that play totally differently.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fake punt. It's a gamble. You either win and look like a genius, or you lose, and everyone's pointing the finger and saying it's your fault. You shouldn't have done that. If Wallace makes that catch, or if it's an incomplete pass, nobody's talking about it.
And
nobody's talking about it.
Ball game could be tied.
It was a good idea, but it should have gone to Amari Evans, not Wallace. Evans has the speed. I mean, Wallace as the number one receiver is supposed to make that jump ball play. That's just it. It's Drew trusting his number one target there.
Speed wasn't the issue there either.
No. Again, great coverage. A.J. Harris proved that he is elite today. He was the only good player on the defense. Absolutely, and that's why I want to take that a step further and say that the biggest mistake that Penn State made, or the thing that they did not do, was have A.J. Harris cover Tez Johnson. If he's so elite, which he is, if he's so elite, why is your elite playmaker not following Oregon's elite playmaker? Oh, because he's in the slot. You can't do that. Yes, you can. Yes, in a game like this when everything's on the line, if they get to the national championship, are you not going to do that because he's a boundary corner? When everything's on the line, I say you go away from the blueprint and you do whatever's necessary.
So elite players play out of position. They fill the role that's needed.
All the time. I don't know why Tom Allen and James Franklin did not make that adjustment. That's an in-game coaching decision. Dan Lanning didn't outcoach Penn State here. No. Penn State outcoached itself. That's really what it was. No, Penn State's big. I've said this all season. Penn State's biggest enemy is Penn State. The adjustments that they do and don't make, and they're so minuscule, but against teams like Ohio State and teams like Oregon, they are going to make you pay. You can get away with it against USC. You can get away with it against Minnesota. You can't get away with it against Oregon and Ohio State, but Penn State is right there. This is not a fraudulent team. They're going to have a home playoff game, and we haven't even gotten into the seeding, Zane, which we're probably going to have to save for the final segment here because I want to get through the comments. I do. Drew Aller needs to shut down all hopes of playing on Sunday.
That's a hot take.
No, that's a freezing cold take, man. That's Drew makes some unbelievable throws. He's tough. He's gritty. He makes good reads. He had errant throws at times. The Dinkins interception is obviously inexcusable. Mm-hmm. That's behind him. I don't know that I necessarily fault him for the Trey Wallace interception. Again, sometimes the opposing player just makes a better play. Mm-hmm. But Drew Aller showed me even more that he is capable of playing in the NFL on Sundays. That's really what it boils down to.
I think he might need another year of college, but I think he can take that step.
We'll see. Only 20 years old. I didn't know that we were making final judgments on 20-year-old football players. I really didn't. Let's go Ducks. Is that woo, wow? Congrats. It may, and depending on Penn State's seeding, might see Oregon in the Rose Bowl. We'll see about that.
These Penn State players want that. They want to play them again.
Oregon is legit. It's about time people start to accept it. I don't know who said otherwise.
I'll say everyone knows they're really good.
Maybe from Oregon's point of view, if there were people that were doubting them or anything, I thought this would be a one-score game. I had this 31-24, and funny enough, that was the halftime score, right? That was a halftime score prediction, everyone. But I knew that it was going to be about a touchdown or so. It ended up being 8 points. So
it's about a touchdown.
But it was really, and I tried to say it, that if Penn State's going to lose any game, it's the defense. They gave up 25 points to Minnesota. That was the red flag. Holding Maryland to 7's one thing. Giving up 25 to Minnesota. I know special teams plays and everything else, but the defense still allowed a barely top 100 offense in Minnesota to score 25. I don't care that it was on the road. That was the telltale sign that they got to figure this out before they face an elite offense like Oregon.
And it's tough to win games when you give up 45 points.
Penn State will be 6th. I hope so. I don't see how the committee can rank them above Texas, but we'll see what they decide. Punishing teams for playing in college football championships will cause a riot. SMU is going to get punished, right? And let's talk about that, Zane. So we're going to take another break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about where Penn State, with so many comments, and I appreciate the conversation. We do have to wrap it up. As like I said, Lucas Oil Stadium's closing down. It's great to do this live show with all of you, but we'll continue the conversation on the other side of this break. And today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. You can keep the action going in the NFL with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet just $5 and you will get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And there's no lines at the moment, but in due time, Penn State's next college football playoff game will be up on FanDuel.com. So you get all the latest lines. You can bet money lines, spreads, totals. You can even bet the odds that Penn State will win the college football playoff championship game. It'll be all over at FanDuel.com. And remember, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, Zane, let's finish it up, and if we do have time, we'll check in on some. I hope I don't lose my spot in the comments here, but let's jump to the conversation about the college football playoff rankings. I don't agree with it. That's how I want to preface this. I'm not arguing that Penn State should be 7th or 8th, but there is a possibility, and the argument is going to be made. Whether or not it's going to be heard is different. You can't put them behind Texas. Or above Texas, excuse me. Texas is going to be the 5 seed one way or another. They lost to the same team twice. There's nothing beyond that for the resume. And then Penn State being 6th makes a lot of sense now, but because of this loss to Oregon, technically Notre Dame has a better winning percentage. I don't know how the College Football Playoff Committee is going to look at that, but some people are going to make the argument and say, well, Penn State was down by 18 at one point to Oregon. They were always playing catch-up. Clearly this team should be down another spot behind Notre Dame. I don't agree with it. I'm saying it's a possibility. Then the Ohio State debate. Well, Penn State lost by a larger margin to Oregon than Ohio State did, and Ohio State beat Penn State head-to-head. They now have the same number of losses again. Forget about the Michigan game. They both have 2 losses. I'm just saying that head-to-head game is going to carry a lot of value, and therefore that puts Penn State. So Texas, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State at 8. That's all I'm just trying to say. If it happens, it's not going to shock me. It's going to frustrate me. I can't say that it's going to anger me because you control what you control, right? That's nothing you can do about it. If the committee does it, and we'll talk about it and talk about the matchup. But Penn State is most likely going to be the 6th seed. That is what I expect, but I know that the arguments will be made because there are people on the committee that view Penn State the same way that the general public does, as not a legitimate college football playoff contender.
Yeah, I think they have reason. I'm not that I agree with it, but I think they have reason to think that way, to think, because Penn State they have one ranked win, and both their other losses were to teams that were both ranked top 3 in the nation at one point. And people are going to make that case. They might die on that hill of that case, but whatever happens, Penn State has to live with what's going on. It doesn't matter what their seeding is. They have to win games no matter what is, and their goal is to win the national championship. So it doesn't matter what road they have. If they want to win the national championship, they're going to have to win all the tough games.
And why I'm trying to point this out, so just kind of pondering it, thinking about it throughout the day, what happens if Penn State wins? Well, we know what's true now in present time here, early Sunday at 1 a.m. In Indianapolis. Like I said, this is a privilege to be here in Lucas Oil Stadium. But my point being about the college, so the debate is, do championship games even matter? Should we just do away with them? That is never going to happen. There,
money.
70,000 fans, box seats, concessions, parking, everything you name it, the build-up, the TV, the millions of viewers that were watching at home. That is not going away. That is never going away. Okay, so if the debate is, do the championship games hold any value, right? And this is why I'm thinking Penn State might get penalized here, because then if they don't, then the championship games don't mean anything, right? I hope they don't. But we shall see, because the committee has shown before, they've set precedent that if you lose your championship game, you are going to get a strike of some sort. We saw it most recently with USC 2 years ago. Besides the point, that was a 14 playoff. This is a 12-team playoff. So maybe things change. But if you put Penn State at 6, and that implies that the Big Ten championship does not matter. So then the argument can be made that, you shouldn't have championship games. What's the point of playing an extra game? But when hundreds of millions of dollars are made on this kind of game, all the conferences benefit. They're not going anywhere. So you have to create additional value to justify this kind of game. It was electric. The atmosphere was incredible. It was everything we could have asked for, no matter who came out on top, Oregon or Penn State. But the committee is going to give some value to these championship games, or else they are worthless. They are meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, you and I were talking about it earlier in the press box. Like, they have to give value to these games, and they're going to put value in the game. I think it could even come to a point like Notre Dame's not in a conference, and these championship games could get enough leverage and have that much importance that Notre Dame may need to join a conference. I'm not saying that will fully happen, but there's a chance the value could be that important to be in a conference as big as the Big Ten or the SEC, that when you're playing that top competition, that it values that much more to win the game or keep the margins at least close, so that you have that chance to go to the playoffs or get better seeding. And in that case, if Penn State would have got blown out, their seeding would have tanked, but they kept it within 8 points.
Definitely for sure. But like I said, the argument's going to be made. Penn State was playing from behind the whole time. They were down by 18. They had they had a fighter's chance, but Oregon was still able to just keep them away. I don't know how that conversation's going to go, but we are going to find out today. It is Sunday, December 8th, everyone, East Coast time. East Coast time. Here's the bright side in all of this. Penn State now has 2 weeks to get healthier. They get some rest time in there, and then they can focus defense. Figure out how you can maximize A.J. Harris. Don't just lock him into the boundary. Have him shadow and develop a game plan to where he can shadow the number one wide receiver, because that worked. Wherever A.J. Harris was, Dylan Gabriel was not going. Evan Stewart, I'm pretty sure he had no catch. He had 0 catches in the game. Trayshawn Holden did little to nothing. So Jalen Kimber deserves a lot of credit too. It was the slot defensive backs, whether it was Zion Tracy, Cam Miller, the moment was too big for them. And that needs to be addressed. Penn State's got to figure out something in the slot, because Cam Miller or Zion Tracy could not cover Tez Johnson. The only person who could in 2 select times that I noticed, maybe it was another play or 2, but that's not enough. That is so unacceptable in this kind of game when the number 1 seed is on the line after Texas lost, and you're not just trying everything. You're not risking everything, because it's winner take all. Mm-hmm. You get the 1 seed. Now you don't get that extra bye, which Penn State absolutely needs. as exciting as a home football playoff game in Beaver Stadium in the dead of winter is going to be, and whether that is Arizona State or Clemson or an SEC team where the home field advantage is truly going to benefit Penn State obviously wanted the bye so much more, but they didn't act like it. They didn't act like they wanted the bye more. So that's ultimately why they lost. They could have made those subtle changes, and they didn't do it enough. They made them here and there, but they didn't do it as much as they should have.
Yeah, it's like you said, Penn State beat themselves. You got to give everything out there. And I think the players individually, gave it their hardest. I think they played hard. But like you said, like if the coaches are going to put them in positions to play their best and give it their all then to the fullest extent, use a guy like A.J. Harris. If you think he's that elite, and the coaches talk highly of him, if you trust a guy like him, you said, put him on your best player. Abdul Carter was in that situation before. He played linebacker. They put him at defensive end because he was that good, and he panned out well. So why can't you make those other adjustments? And a lot of that does come down to coaching, because Penn State has to decide if they're going to gamble and try to put that best decision. Apparently, not putting A.J. Harris or your best player per se on them isn't making a difference. So you need to maximize everything you have. If it's already not working, why not change it up more? Sure, we don't get paid millions of dollars to be coaches, but I don't know.
And it's easy to look up from 1,000 feet in the press box and say X, Y, Z. It's just why not try it a little more at a higher frequency? So all the responsibility is on Tom Allen and the defense. The offensive line proved me wrong. I thought they would struggle with Oregon's defensive line. They did not struggle. They actually they took the fight to them. Penn State's offensive line won against Oregon's defensive line. I know that doesn't matter. Moral victories don't matter here, but the offensive line showed me a lot. Nolan Rucci showed me a lot. Drew Aller, despite mistakes, proved that he can make these incredible acrobatic throws. Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, look what happens when the offensive line is firing on all cylinders and they're clicking and they're in sync and they're in rhythm. Singleton and Allen look like those all-star running backs that we saw in 2022 as true freshmen. Offense is not the issue. It's all on Tom Allen and the secondary. The secondary outside of A.J. Harris, Jalen Reed, Zach Wheatley, it's really just the other cornerbacks, the other defensive backs that rotate in and out. Penn State's got to find who's going to step up and give you at least half of what A.J. Harris is going to give you. That's going to do it here, because that's starting to quiet down, and that kind of worries me here in Lucas Oil Stadium. Thank you so much. If you stayed up with us, if you made the trip to Indianapolis, safe travels. Everyone be well. Penn State, there's obviously light at the end of the tunnel. They're going to have a home football playoff game. They're going to have an advantageous matchup that they should win. And then getting into the quarterfinal, and then it's kind of everything from there. If you get the 6 seed, depending on who that 3 seed is, the 6 seed might not be bad. Boise State, potentially Arizona State, Clemson. I don't know how it's all going to unfold specifically, but I am anticipating either Boise State or Arizona State being the 3 or the 4, or maybe flip-flopping. Arizona State's the 3. Either way, Penn State is getting a favorable path with a home game at Beaver Stadium, and then whomever that 3 seed is, if they happen to be the 6 seed. But I don't know. We'll find out Sunday, December 8th in the afternoon. We're going to react to it. We're going to talk about it all week, start and get the conversations going, because that's what everyone wants to talk about at this point in time. He is Zane Brancefield, associate producer here to the podcast. My name is Zach Seyko, your host as always. Again, I am grateful for this platform to speak about Penn State football and other Penn State sports. Thank you so much for spending this time with us post-game here on the live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, and we'll talk to you very soon here on the show.